and welcome back to
Books, Beer
and Wine.
My name is Karina.
And my name is Cora.
And we are here with another book review, and we have to admit it's one of our favorites so far this year.
Yes.
And we were looking forward to it for a very long time.
Also true.
And the author took her time to write this novel, and now we read it.
Yes.
And it's about...
So first it's called To Paradise. It's by Hanya Yanagihara.
And you might know her from A Little Life, which was very popular when it was
award-winning,
published.
Also very traumatizing, but really, really good. Really good.
Yes.
I loved that book, although it's really
hard.
It's hard, difficult, and I didn't sleep very well the few weeks I was reading it, but all worth it. And this book is also very, very amazing, but you have to be aware that her books are, how should I put it, don't expect it to make you feel better when you read that book. I think you can say that.
Because it will make you feel better,
yes.
but it's a very important part of literature.
And it's really good, and if you haven't ever read anything by Hanya, you should know her books are long. So I think this was 900 pages.
Yeah, I guess so.
And A Little Life was about 700 if I remember correctly. I didn't read the first one, so I don't know, but yeah.
It's gonna take you, but it didn't take us actually that long to read it because it was so tense and catchy.
It took me about 10 days.
Yeah, and that's not that much for like 900 plus pages.
Yeah, or maybe I think mine was 890, but around 900, yeah. So it's read it in German, and German is a long language.
It's a bit longer than in German.
So yeah, German translations are always longer than the English originals.
Yes, but it was so worth it, and you definitely should read it. And in my opinion, Hanya Yanagihara is one of the authors that you have to read if you are interested in LGBTIQ plus topics.
It's basically 3 books. The first story took up about a quarter of the book. It's set in 1894. 90s.
But you have to know that this book spans about 3 centuries.
Yes, but so first book is
set in
1890s. Then you have exactly 100 years later, 1990s, and then again exactly 100 years later, 2090s.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 300 years, but they are not really in contents connected. So there is a
motive.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say that there is a crossover, you could say, in the last book, but you don't even have to read the first book to understand that. So it's just a tiny extra you'll like when you read it, I guess.
Yeah, you can basically just read one of them, and you'd have a complete story. So that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
But
so that's the structure,
Exactly, but if you read all of them, you see that they are connected regarding topics, important topics, motives, people, actions. It's like...
so maybe just tell them about the contents.
Yeah, well.
What's the first book about?
The first book is set in 1894-95, I'm not really sure, but it's set in New York, which is one of the free states, and it's one of the great things I loved about this book is that it's a dystopia set in the past.
Yeah.
Which I've never read before, because dystopia is usually in the future, so this time it's like an alternate past.
Oh, but we had that with Outlawed.
Yeah, that's
It was
true.
set, so maybe it's a new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I really like that, and
In an
it's
alternative.
set in New York, which is one of the free states. And you have to imagine in New York in 1890s, it's not like it really has been, but people are free to choose their partners, and usually they choose gay romance.
Not usually. So the people
in New York, they are gay.
Yeah.
They are
No,
gay people living together.
Yeah, but you could choose anyone. I mean, there are straight relationships
as well, but it's totally common to have
yeah.
gay relationships, and
which so some people come to the free states
to live,
read that book to understand the free states.
Yes.
But to yeah.
And it's not everywhere. It's just really pronounced that it's the state where people are free to love whomever they want to love. Yeah. And of course there's lots of gay people there because it's the only place where they are allowed to live together.
Yeah.
And so the story is about a gay young man, David, who is about to be married to another man, because you would imagine, okay, in a perfect world like this, where everyone's free to love, well, that sounds perfect, but actually it's not, because they have to be, they have arranged marriages.
Yeah, so it's not as free
as you would think.
Yeah.
And
not necessarily arranged, but sometimes. So David is just so he's the heir to the most important bank in the Free States. So his grandfather has an interest to have him married. Yes. Well.
And his grandfather picks a nice man for David.
Suggests.
Well, his chosen future husband is a very nice, intelligent man called Charles.
And we have
Edward, who is a musician teaching at a school.
Yeah.
And David is poor circumstances, so his grandfather would have never picked Edward to be the chosen husband. But like it is in those kind of stories, David kind of
he totally falls for
Edward.
Yeah. So second book
set in the 1990s.
Yeah.
AIDS epidemic.
Yeah. And it's also set in New York.
It's always New York.
In the same house.
Always New York, always the same building.
But it's also, so this book is kind of in two parts as well, because the first half is set in New York and Manhattan, and the second in Hawaii. And I really liked learning more about Hawaii.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the second story is about two men who are in a relationship. One of them is called David.
It's again about David, a David of the same name but a different David, and about Charles of the same name but a different Charles.
Yes, and they have a relationship, and Charles is much older than David is, and they kind of live in different worlds because they have different views on life, and just comes with the age.
Yeah, so Charles is a very successful lawyer and David is a paralegal, and they met at work.
They both don't seem to know each other that well to understand where they are coming from.
Yeah. But they also don't ask the questions.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
We learn a lot about David's family, and that's where it gets to the Hawaiian place.
Yeah.
Where we learn lots of about his ancestors and
his father.
The history of Hawaii. Exactly.
Yeah.
And
so the second part of the second book is basically a flashback a few decades back. So when his father was younger. But it goes up to his today, right?
Yeah, it does.
Because it kind of ends, the second book kind of ends in the 1990s again.
Yeah.
So it spans maybe 2 or 3 decades,
yeah,
maybe longer.
So we have his family history, basically the history of his father, and we have in the present where it's set we have the AIDS epidemic and all the struggles that come with it. That's affecting their relationship.
But they don't. So it's kind of central, the AIDS epidemic, but it's not at the center.
No, it's not.
Yeah, so that wasn't.
It's not what this book is
that
about.
Much of a downer.
No, it's not. No,
Yeah.
no, not like you used maybe from other books about that.
After Francesco.
For example.
So, third book. It's half of the book.
Yeah.
Set in the future, but also very
2090s.
Yeah, with a lot of flashbacks.
Yeah.
So it's probably 30, 40, whatever percent are flashbacks leading to what are the 2090s.
Yes, and that was what really the most scary and best part for me of that book was reading that story, because
that
you
was
have to
downer.
know. Yeah, you have to know that Hanya Yanagihara wrote and finished that book before COVID-19 hit the earth.
Not finish it completely, but so that part of the story was basically finished.
Exactly, and then you read about this future set in 2090s, and it's a world full of pandemics and diseases, and we have the main character who lives in this world.
Guess the name.
There is our protagonist lives in a marriage and lives in Manhattan,
of course,
in that same building that was mentioned in the books before. And you have to imagine it's a living life during a never-ending pandemic, because all the jobs, all the work, the social life is centered around pandemics. So jobs are to prevent pandemics. There's not like you have the jobs that you would have now, because everyone is being.
So you don't need flight attendants anymore because no one is flying anymore. You don't need hotels anymore because no one is traveling anymore. So the entire industries are just shut down completely, and then what you just said.
It's all to prevent future pandemics, and to not to prevent them. I guess they got used to having them, but to
find cures,
and to detect them early enough. So that you can isolate those people that probably have a new disease, and to isolate them early enough, and to find a cure and to find vaccination and stuff like that. So that's the world we are now in, and it's so different, and you would think it's so far away from our world, but if you get deeper into reading it, it really is not. So the more you find out about this future we're living in that book, the more you relate to our current situation, because first you think it's very far away from our lifestyle and our life situation. Then for me it was like, then I was going to work and I was walking by all those, then I crossed all those test centers and people coming towards me wearing their masks, and I was
so we have tons of centers here where you can get tested for COVID-19, so for free. And in most places here you still have to wear a mask. And
I was thinking, okay, this is still far away from our everyday life, and then I go to work and I realize, no, it's not. And maybe this, what we are having now, is just the beginning, and I don't want to think about it any longer because it's going to make me depressed. But I guess we are entering a kind of century of pandemics and diseases, probably. And that's what she is talking about in her book, and she's really painted a good picture of how it could be, probably in a
not so far
future and in a pessimistic way, but maybe it's kind of realistic. So I really enjoyed reading it, because it was very tense and kept me reading, and it was my favorite story of the book. So from the 3 books.
I thought it was the first.
No, it was the 3rd one, followed closely by the first. I really loved the first book of the book. The book of the book. I really loved the first chapter part. A lot, but from maybe because it's so close. It's closer than the 19th century.
Yeah, wow.
We're feeling, it's feeling like it's closer from the situation.
Yeah.
So maybe I could relate more to that story. What was your favorite?
I'm not sure. I liked all of them in a different way.
I like them all as well, but if you had to pick one.
Who makes me pick? Can we pick a favorite protagonist? A favorite person? The Davids?
Well, they are all having the same name, but I really enjoyed the protagonist from the 3rd book. I liked a lot because of all the thoughts I was part of as a reader, and the choices that were made.
Yeah.
And I felt sorry and can relate to that situation if you think into that character.
Yeah, I think it's a good point because that character lets you take part in all their thoughts.
Yes.
So.
And I loved the first David because, well, we can't say too much, but I could understand his actions.
Yeah.
And I felt that I could say from the outside you would always say, yeah, do this, do that, blah. But if I imagine I would be David from the first book, I could understand his actions.
Stupid me that I asked this question because I can't pick, I think.
It's really hard, but that says that it's a good book because you have many great characters in.
Yeah, and all of them are, or most of them are very ambivalent. So like the last Charles, so where you're really like, what an a-hole in some instances. What you learn, what you sometimes learn about him, but then again,
I kind of liked him.
Yeah, so I don't know what I would do in his situation.
I liked him, I really, and that's why I loved this 3rd book so much, because really I liked all those characters so much. And I could relate to, I could understand why they did what they did. And that was very well written, because I could always imagine, okay, if I were in his shoes or her shoes or whatever, well, I understand why they did choose that path and not another one. That's what made the 3rd book so special for me. But to sum it up, you have to read all those 3 books. You don't have to, but afterwards you can see that all those 3 books ask the same questions. And that is, what does freedom mean to you in different circumstances? What is freedom, and what is your own identity? Your own, who are you? Are you dependent on people around you? Why are you free? How are you free?
So it's basically about freedom and dependence and or independence. Just to sum it up.
I really love that book. It's so awesome, really, and it makes you think a lot, and you should read it. Read this book if you are interested in good literature, really good.
Of course people are interested in good literature, otherwise they wouldn't watch
really
books.
Really good language, because she also manages from a...
Her language is beautiful.
Her language is, but she adapts her language too.
Yeah.
If you read the first book set in the 19th century, there's another language, of course, than in the 2nd or 3rd book.
Yeah, and it's just beautifully written. So it's really, it's such a pleasure to read this book.
There are sentences in it that you would want to highlight with a text?
I did a lot. So I've read it on my ebook reader and I highlighted tons of passages.
So read it
and highlight everything you think is beautiful.
And after that, you come to us and discuss it with us.
Yes, you should do that. See you then with wine and
beer.
Where's your beer? Oh, wine and beer. And books, of course. It's books, beer and wine. See you next time. That was a rhyme. Oh my god, I can't stop.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.